Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, when in truth, it is a weapon wielded by the disciplined. Most men, when hurt or rejected, rush to fill the void with noise, messages, explanations, demands for closure, anything to prove they still matter. Yet every word sent in desperation only cements the truth: she has power. Ignoring her is not childishness or cruelty, it is reclaiming authority over yourself. The man who once chased after replies, staring at his phone like it was the oxygen mask keeping him alive, begins to realize that validation is not currency. When he withdraws, not with bitterness but with certainty, he stops being her puppet. His silence says more than 1,000 rehearsed speeches. It tells her, I don't live for your attention. My life continues, with or without your approval. There is no malice in true silence, only freedom. She was once the center of his emotional weather, capable of making him shine or storm with a single word. Now she is just another cloud passing through his sky. That shift in energy is not subtle, it's seismic. She can sense it in the way his presence no longer bends toward her, in the way his laughter sounds unbothered, in the way his focus moves toward his own mission. Silence is not absence, it is presence redirected. It forces her to confront something terrifying: her ability to command him has ended. And when the command no longer works, curiosity begins to creep in. She wonders why the strings she once pulled no longer move the man in front of her. She wonders if she ever truly had him at all, or if he finally woke up to the truth that his life has always been his own. The psychology behind silence is simple but devastating. Humans crave what they cannot easily have, and the moment you stop being available on demand, your value multiplies. When you were present at every moment, texting first, showing up at her call, proving over and over that she mattered more than yourself, you became routine, and routine breeds boredom. But when you pull back, when the noise of your presence fades, she feels that emptiness in a way she cannot explain. The chair you once sat in is empty, the notifications she expected no longer appear, the rhythm she grew used to is broken. At first, she convinces herself it feels good. Freedom, space, independence, these are the words she repeats to herself. She posts louder, smiles wider, fills her schedule, and tells the world she's thriving. Yet in quiet moments, the mind turns, and the silence you've left behind echoes louder than her distractions. Scarcity rewires the way she perceives you. Where she once saw too much, she now sees too little, and what is rare always feels more valuable. She remembers your words not as background noise but as fragments worth revisiting. And when she tries to test you, to bait you with a post, a glance, a half-hearted message, your silence refuses her the reward she once counted on. Each failed attempt plants doubt in her. Why doesn't he react? Why doesn't he chase? The control she wielded begins to collapse, and with it comes an uncomfortable truth: she is no longer the author of your emotions. The same silence she once thought she wanted now becomes the very thing she cannot endure, because it forces her to question not only you, but herself. There are unspoken rules to practicing silence, and without them, the entire effort collapses. The first rule is that silence must be born from strength, not revenge. If you disappear simply to provoke her, if you hide away hoping she notices and suffers, then you are still tethered to her approval. That kind of silence is hollow, because it still revolves around her. True silence is when you stop performing entirely, not because you want her to chase, but because you finally stepped out of the arena where her validation mattered. The second rule is that silence must be accompanied by progress. To withdraw and do nothing is not silence, it is stagnation. When you go quiet, you must build. You must channel the energy you once wasted into yourself, into your body, your work, your ambitions, your friendships, your peace. Let her absence be the spark that forges a stronger man, not the excuse for sulking in shadows. The third rule is that silence is not a hostage tactic. It is not about punishing her until she comes crawling back, nor is it about twisting her emotions into knots so you can feel powerful again. It is about clarity. If there is still a path forward together, silence becomes the reset button, giving space for both people to reflect. If reconciliation is no longer possible, then silence is the clean break that spares you endless cycles of arguing and explanation. Either way, it liberates you. And the final truth of this rulebook is simple: silence heals you first. It strips you of desperation, it strengthens your patience, and it teaches you to hold your ground. It is not a performance, it is a transformation.
When silence is applied correctly, she begins to move through stages that almost always follow the same pattern, though the timeline varies. The first stage is denial.
She convinces herself that she's free, that your absence is exactly what she wanted. She throws herself into distractions, uploads smiling pictures, fills her calendar, and declares to her friends that she feels lighter. But beneath the surface, this is only performance, because the brain does not adjust to loss instantly, it pretends.
Then comes the second stage, curiosity.
She starts to notice the gap, the absence of your presence. She wonders why the phone stays silent, why the attention she once dismissed so casually no longer arrives. It begins subtly, a glance at your profile, a quick thought about where you might be, a text message sent half-heartedly. When your silence holds steady, the discomfort grows. The third stage is cognitive dissonance. She replays memories in her mind, struggling to reconcile her old image of you, the man who always responded, who always leaned in, with the reality of your calm withdrawal. She may tell herself you never cared, but the silence contradicts that story. If you didn't care, why does it feel so heavy now? The final stage is impact. This is when she sees that your life has not only continued but improved without her. The pictures show growth, the aura feels lighter, the energy is unbothered. That's the cut she never expects, not that you survived her absence, but that you thrived in it. That truth is the hardest to swallow, because it forces her to face the reality she worked so hard to avoid. The relationship did not define you.
In silence, you defined yourself.
Silence, when practiced with maturity, is never about cruelty or turning cold.
It is about reclaiming balance and respect, both for yourself and for the situation.
Too many men mistake ignoring her for a tactic of revenge, as if withholding attention could somehow settle old scores. But revenge keeps you chained to the very person you're trying to rise above.
Real silence comes from empathy and self-respect.
You acknowledge that both of you are human, capable of wounding and being wounded, but you also recognize that chasing after someone who brings chaos into your life is a betrayal of yourself. By withdrawing, you're not saying she is worthless, you are saying your peace is priceless. That distinction is what makes the silence clean rather than toxic.
There is a quiet dignity in refusing to play the game.
If she reaches out with sincerity, with genuine accountability and a desire to rebuild something healthier, then silence has created the space for that possibility. But if she returns with the same patterns, manipulation, drama, blame, then your silence has already spared you from reopening old wounds. Either way, the silence works because it prioritizes your well-being above her approval. The highest form of strength is when her absence no longer destabilizes you, when you stop scanning the horizon for her shadow. That kind of calm is unshakable, and she feels it even if you never say a word. The irony is that the less you need to prove, the louder your presence becomes. Silence becomes its own message. You are no longer available for the cycles of chaos, you are no longer begging for attention. And in that steadiness lies the truest form of power a man can carry. The irony of silence is that while it unsettles her, it transforms you even more. Every time you resist the temptation to send that late-night message, every time you hold back from reacting to her bait, you are rewiring yourself. You are teaching your nervous system that desperation is not your default state, that you can live without constant reassurance. At first, the silence feels unbearable, like an itch under the skin. You crave the dopamine hit of her attention, even if it comes as conflict. But as days pass, the craving weakens, and something stronger begins to grow in its place: self-control. You learn that peace is more satisfying than her unpredictable storms, and this realization reshapes you from the inside out. She may try to test you during this process. A message out of nowhere, a social media post designed to spark jealousy, a chance encounter that feels almost too coincidental. In the past, you would have jumped, reacting with eagerness or anger, proving she still held the strings. Now, the silence is your shield. You acknowledge the test but refuse to play. You no longer need to respond, because the outcome no longer dictates your mood. And that indifference is the very thing she never expected. Her power relied on your willingness to perform, to dance whenever she played the tune. But when you stop moving, the music dies. That is when the lesson sets in, not only for her but for you. You realize strength is not in chasing, not in reacting, but in restraint. By ignoring her, you free yourself from the cycle, and the man who emerges is calmer, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous because he no longer runs on need.
Silence holds its power because women are natural communicators, driven by emotion and fueled by attention.
When you stop feeding that system, it feels like starvation to her, and the absence becomes louder than any words you could ever speak. But the key is authenticity. Your silence must be real, not staged. Too many men fall into the trap of pretending to be silent on the outside while obsessing on the inside, checking her social media, replaying old conversations, imagining her return. That is not silence, that is noise hidden beneath a mask. She can sense it, because energy does not lie. If your silence is bitter and rooted in revenge, she will dismiss it as immaturity. But if it is calm, grounded, and authentic, she will feel it in her bones. True silence comes from building a life so full that her absence does not leave you broken, but rather creates more space for growth. It is mornings dedicated to your goals, evenings spent in the company of people who value you, and nights where you sleep without waiting for her text. It is not that you stop caring about her as a human being, it's that you stop centering your existence around her. That kind of calm is magnetic because it radiates security, and security is rare. She begins to question herself in ways she never did before. Was she ever as important as she believed? Did she overestimate her hold on you? These questions echo in her mind, not because you shouted them, but because you said nothing at all. Silence forces her to wrestle with doubts she cannot silence herself, and that quiet weight lingers far longer than words ever could. Over time, silence creates a contrast so sharp that it carves into her memory. She expected noise, arguments, explanations, pleas, maybe even anger. Those are predictable responses, and predictable men are easily dismissed. But when she is met with nothing, when her provocations are swallowed by calm, the effect is haunting. A man who argues reveals his hand, a man who begs confirms his dependence, a man who stays silent reveals nothing. That nothing is powerful, because the mind despises a vacuum. She begins to replay conversations, searching for clues she missed. She stalks for signs, reading between lines that no longer exist. Your silence forces her to become her own narrator, filling in blanks with endless speculation. This shift repositions your value. In a world where most men fold quickly, where they chase and plead for one more chance, your refusal to break makes you unforgettable. You no longer blend into the noise of desperate suitors, your absence makes you stand out. Other men may offer attention on demand, but attention without scarcity has no weight. Your silence, on the other hand, becomes a riddle, a presence in its own right. She cannot measure it, cannot predict it, and that unpredictability unsettles her more than anger ever could. Closure is something she might expect, but silence denies it. You give her no final chapter to close, no neatly tied explanation to shelve away. Instead, she is left with questions that stretch into nights of overthinking. Did she misjudge your strength? Did she underestimate your worth? The silence lingers because it is unfinished, and unfinished things stay alive in the mind. In the end, you become harder to forget precisely because you chose not to speak. At its core, ignoring her is not about manipulation, nor is it some cheap trick to play with emotions, it is about reclaiming leadership over your own life. Words can be twisted, arguments can be dismissed, but silence is undeniable. When you withhold the endless explanations, when you refuse to beg for her attention, you are enforcing a boundary in the strongest way possible. It tells her without a single sentence, I will not sacrifice my dignity to keep what does not want to stay. Boundaries built through silence command respect, not because they are loud, but because they are unshakable. She may question, she may test, she may even resent it, but deep down, she knows it comes from strength. This act does not just alter her perception of you, it redefines your perception of yourself. The first revelation is that you never needed her to feel complete, you only believed you did. The second is that strength is not proven by chasing or convincing, but by restraint, by the ability to walk away without collapsing. And the third is that peace is more magnetic than chaos. When you reach the point where silence feels natural, where your focus rests entirely on building, growing, and thriving, you no longer see her as the center of your story. She becomes a chapter, not the book. Whether she returns or disappears forever, the outcome is irrelevant, because the real victory has already been claimed. You chose yourself. You stopped performing for someone else's validation and instead invested in your own power. That is the transformation silence offers. It dismantles illusions, severs control, and rebuilds you into a man who is no longer ruled by need.
And in that transformation, you win.